Outside of the quarterback, wide receiver trades often draw the most attention. In the past 25 years, we've seen big-name receivers get sent to other teams, and it usually goes one of two ways. They either hit the absolute jackpot,
and a one-handed attempt. Oh my goodness!
Or it's a complete disaster, and it leaves the front office and fans wishing they never made the move.
Randy Moss, Marshall.
In today's video, we will check out the last 25 years of Blockbuster wide receiver trades and see which were the best and which were the worst. Now, keep in mind, this video is meant to cover the biggest wide receiver names in the game, and/or the draft capital that was sent to get them was massive. I'm only looking at these trades from the perspective of the teams who traded for the receiver, and not the teams who acquired the picks. So this video is not about who won the trade or anything. It's simply about whether or not these teams got the value that they desired out of the receivers they traded for. At the end of the day, for an NFL team to be overpaying for a big name wide receiver who is underperforming, it's about as bad as it gets. It's kind of like when you find out you're still paying for a RuneScape account that you haven't played in years. Hey, sometimes these kind of things happen, and luckily when it comes to managing your finances, Rocket Money, today's video sponsor, is here to help. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that will help you cancel unwanted subscriptions, lower bills, and help you manage your money better. I personally love to use Rocket Money to cancel unwanted subscriptions. It happens to the best of us. We get signed up for something and then time goes by and we completely forget about it. Once you connect your bank account, Rocket Money identifies all your subscriptions in a single list. From there, you can select the ones you don't want anymore, and Rocket Money may be able to help you cancel with just a few taps. Overall, Rocket Money has helped its customers save up to $740 a year when you use the app's premium features. That is a ton of money. Make things easier on yourself and take control of your finances today. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to get started for free. Shout out to Rocket Money for the sponsor. Now let's get back to the video. On February 12th, 2000, the Dallas Cowboys made big headlines when they sent 2 first-round picks to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for Joey Galloway. Galloway was a former top 10 pick who had spent 5 years in Seattle. He hadn't made a Pro Bowl to that point in his career, but he had 3 1,000-yard seasons in those 5 years. His final year in Seattle, he only played in 8 games due to a contract dispute. This move was made primarily to replace the legendary Michael Irvin, who played his last season in 1999, and Jerry Jones made Galloway the second highest paid receiver in the league at the time. Well, the trade did not go as planned. Galloway got injured in the first game of the season and missed the entire year. In the following 3 years, he didn't achieve one 1,000-yard season. And by the end of 2003, he was basically only a deep threat, finishing 5th on the team in receptions. Galloway was traded following the season. Also in 2000, the Tampa Bay Bucks made big news when they sent 2 first-round picks to the New York Jets in exchange for Keyshawn Johnson. Johnson was a former #1 overall pick who got off to a bit of a slow start, but had really found a groove by 1998 and 1999. But with a contract dispute on the horizon, the Jets did not want to meet Johnson's salary demands. Whereas the Bucks felt like they were on the cusp of a championship run, so they were willing to pay up, and they made Johnson the highest paid receiver in the NFL with a 8-year, $56 million contract. So how did things go? Well, at first it was a bit underwhelming, but by year 2, Keyshawn Johnson was going off. He had his career highs in yards and receptions, and he was a Pro Bowler. And after that season, the team made big news when they traded for head coach Jon Gruden. In 2002, Johnson saw his targets and production overall dip, but the team was on a different level that season as they went on to win the Super Bowl. Johnson certainly played an important role, including scoring a touchdown in the NFC Championship. As great as winning a Super Bowl was, the drama between Gruden and Johnson became a big story the following year. 2003 was a catastrophic disappointment for the entire Bucs organization. And Johnson, who was disgruntled with his lack of production, became problematic.
He never was one of us. He just wanted the contract and the notoriety, but he didn't want the work.
It's a difference between mandatory and voluntary mandatory. I'll take my chances on the voluntary mandatory stuff.
He started skipping team meetings, missing curfew before games, and he allegedly went into Jon Gruden's office and told him that he didn't like him and that his offense sucked. Things got so bad between him and the Bucs that during that season, for the final 6 weeks of the year, they paid Keyshawn Johnson to stay at home. And here's an excerpt from Warren Sapp's book in regards to what Johnson had told Gruden in his office. Quote, "Gruden repeated what he'd told me, and we sat there and voted Keyshawn off the team. 6-0. There wasn't one of us who was interested in keeping him. We didn't believe we needed him either. It was Keenan, not Keyshawn, who'd caught 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl."
I'm not saying that he couldn't play the game because he was a good player. But was he one of those rare air special guys? No.
So while there was some good times during those 4 years in Tampa, things went up in flames by the end. And coincidentally, those 2 receivers in 2000 that were traded for, Keyshawn Johnson to the Bucs and Joey Galloway to the Cowboys, they were traded for each other in 2004. Galloway ended up having more success in Tampa, but Johnson was pretty underwhelming in Dallas. In 2003, the Falcons were looking to give Michael Vick a number 1 wide receiver, so they went out and traded with the Buffalo Bills. They sent a first-round pick to them in exchange for Peerless Price. Price had been a good receiver in 2002. He had 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns, so hopefully this was going to be the player to take this offense to the next level. But unfortunately, that did not happen. First off, Michael Vick got hurt in 2003, only playing in 5 games, and the team had to turn to Doug Johnson and Kirk Kittner, both of whom did not do well under center. Price was the most targeted receiver on the team, but this was the worst passing offense in the NFL, as he only amounted to 838 yards. In 2004, when Vick returned, Price only caught 45 passes, and overall had his worst statistical season since his rookie year. The team released Price after the season. In 2004, Terrell Owens was sent to the Eagles in a complex 3-team trade. Ultimately, what had happened was he was initially traded to the Ravens, but Terrell Owens did not want to go there. He insisted that he wanted to play in Philadelphia. And ultimately, the whole reason that this even happened was because his agent forgot to file the paperwork to make him a free agent before that happened. So he was never supposed to still be on the Niners. It was his agent's fault. Anyways, T.O. was one of the most popular and polarizing players in the NFL at the time. And right away, he was a beast in Philly.
His way. Fires it his way. There's Owens at the 45, inside the 20, and on the first play at Philadelphia in an Eagle uniform, Terrell Owens takes it 81 yards right on the jersey number.
In his first season with them, T.O. was dominant with 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns, and earned first-team All-Pro honors. This helped Philly become one of the top teams in the NFL. However, despite an awesome season, Owens suffered a severely sprained ankle and fractured fibula on December 19, 2004 versus the Cowboys. This required surgery and seemingly ended his season. Yet somehow, through the use of microcurrent and hyperbaric chamber, Owens healed enough to somehow play in the Super Bowl after the Eagles made a playoff run without him. In that game, Owens played out of his mind considering the circumstances. He had 9 catches and 122 yards in a heartbreaking last-minute loss versus the Patriots. That season was as good as things got for the T.O. Philly era. This was a tough defeat to swallow, and the drama that would ensue following this game would dominate the headlines. 2005 was a media circus. There was the drama between McNabb and Owens and the organization. As a whole, it was just a dark cloud over the organization, especially during the offseason. And at one point during the offseason, Owens had said that he wanted to play in the NBA Summer League, something that the Eagles front office obviously did not allow him to do. Ultimately, 2005 was a disaster, but in a strict football sense, for the first 7 games, Owens was playing some of the best football, if not the best football of his career. It was just that the off-the-field noise was too much by the end, and it derailed the season. The team eventually suspended Owens for the remainder of the season, which was due to Owens saying that the team would have been better off with Brett Favre at quarterback. McNabb and the team did not like this, and Owens was released following the season. In 2005, the Oakland Raiders made a big-time trade when they got Randy Moss from the Vikings for a first, a 7th, and linebacker Napoleon Harris. At the time, Randy Moss was probably the best receiver in the game, at least he was during the early 2000s. The dude literally changed the game when he got to the NFL. He's one of the few players whose name has become a description for getting owned on a play. But due to some strained relationships between Moss and the organization, as well as an outgoing owner who wanted to save money, it ended with Moss leaving Minnesota. When Moss arrived in Oakland, things looked good at first as he was making a ton of plays. He averaged 116.5 yards per game over his first 4 games. Then, all of a sudden, his production took a nosedive.
Kerry Collins got there, and Kerry didn't want to throw him the ball because he didn't believe that this was open. When Randy did this, he was open. I said, Kerry, throw the ball. One, he's not open. I'm like, what's going to happen? Either he's going to catch it, they're going to pass interference, or the ball's going to hit the ground. They're not picking it off. Throw him the ball. He wouldn't throw it. He wouldn't throw it.
With a quarterback who didn't want to throw deep to him, Moss had a good but underwhelming first season by his standards, as Oakland was one of the worst teams in the NFL. In 2006, it only got worse. The Raiders were the worst team in the league, averaging an abysmal 10 points a game, and Moss only accounted for 553 yards and 3 touchdowns. This was an all-time low for his career. And from one of his player introductions during a game, you get the vibe that he just did not want to be there.
Lamar Jordan, University of Maryland.
Zach Crockett, Florida State.
Randy Moss, Marshall.
This trade was just bad for everyone involved, including the Vikings, who pretty much got nothing out of the picks that they acquired. And for Randy Moss, after 2 forgettable seasons in Oakland, he got a surprise phone call.
I call up Randy, said, hey, Randy, it's Coach Belichick. Boom. Hangs up the phone. Let me try this again. It's Coach Belichick. Who is this? Who's pranking me? Who is this? Bam. Hangs up the phone. Randy, this is Coach Belichick. We traded for you. What? Is this a joke? This better not be a joke. Who is this? No. This is, all right. Really? He flies, and he's there at 8 o'clock in the morning, comes in and takes the physical, you know, the old.
Yeah. Make sure he's alive.
Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
So just like that, Randy Moss went from Andrew Walter throwing to him to Tom Brady. Now, with that said, it's worth noting that Moss had pretty low expectations going into 2007. Brady was viewed as a successful player, but more of a game manager who had a good system around him. And Moss was considered washed after those 2 years in Oakland. On the same day that Moss was acquired, the Patriots had also traded for Wes Welker, the Dolphins slot receiver who had given the Patriots trouble in the past. In total for these 2 players, the Patriots had given up a 2nd, 4th, and 7th round pick. And needless to say, that would turn out to be a massive bargain.
In the end zone. This is unbelievable.
The 2000 Patriots went on to shock the entire NFL, putting up all-time great numbers. This included putting up over 36 points a game and winning by an average margin of nearly 20 a game. Randy Moss went from 553 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2006 to 1,493 yards and an NFL record 23 touchdowns in 2007. Even though they ended up losing in the Super Bowl that year in devastating fashion, you can't take away how amazing that regular season was, especially on an individual level for Moss, Welker, and Brady. In total, Moss spent a little over 3 years in New England, and for the most part, he was dominant. Obviously, 2007 was incredible. He set an NFL record for touchdowns, and 2008 probably would have been another amazing season if Tom Brady didn't get hurt in week 1. And for Welker, he became the standard for the slot receiver in the NFL during those days. He led the league 3 times in catches from 2007 to 2012, and he made 5 straight Pro Bowls in that span. You want to talk about the greatest single day of wide receiver trades for one team? I don't know if anything will beat what the Patriots pulled off in 2007. And you want to talk about a dumpster fire franchise? The Raiders used the pick they got for Randy Moss to draft John Bowie, who ended up playing in 5 total career games. As amazing as it was for Moss in New England, it wasn't perfect. He didn't play a huge role in their playoff games from 2007 to 2009, and in 2010, things ended a little turbulent for Moss and the Patriots. After a rough start to the season, Moss requested a trade from the team, and they actually sent him back to Minnesota for a 3rd round pick. He ended up playing in just 4 games for them, before the team waived him off the roster. In the midst of the 2008 season, the Cowboys fell to 4-2 after a devastating overtime loss. And during this time, because of how 2007 went for the Cowboys, they were seen as Super Bowl contenders. And Jerry Jones felt like, hey, we already have Terrell Owens, who's been with us for 2 years, and he's been a beast, and we found our quarterback in Tony Romo, so let's go get him another weapon. They sent a haul to Detroit, a first, a third, and a sixth round pick for wide receiver Roy Williams. Williams was a former top 10 pick and had all the talent necessary to be a big-time player. With the Lions in 2006, he was a Pro Bowler after going for over 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns. But after the Lions acquired Keyshawn Johnson in 2007, Williams saw a fall-off in production. Funny enough, the Cowboys already had a Roy Williams on their roster when they acquired this Roy Williams. But anyways, Roy Williams, the wide receiver, almost did nothing in 2008, amounting to just 19 catches, 198 yards, and a touchdown in 10 games. His production increased slightly after that, but he ended up being a big disappointment in Dallas. The team got rid of him after 2010. And so far, you can see that just about every receiver move the Cowboys make seems to blow up in their face. In 2010, the Broncos sent Brandon Marshall to the Dolphins for 2 second-round picks. To that point in his career, Marshall had been a total stud, but he had numerous off-the-field issues, and there was a contract dispute where the team just didn't want to pay him what he wanted, so they sent him out to Miami. For 2 years, Marshall was a solid number 1 for the Dolphins, especially in 2011 where he earned Pro Bowl honors. But the team wasn't very good, and off the field, Marshall struggled and was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in 2011. The Dolphins decided they didn't want to deal with Marshall anymore, so they traded him to Chicago for a 3rd-round pick. And immediately, Marshall was arguably the best receiver in the NFL. He led the league in catches and yards, setting all-time Bears records in 2012. 2013 ended up being a special year in Chicago offensively. Cutler and his trio of weapons, Matt Forte, Alshon Jeffrey, and Brandon Marshall, were on another level. But their defense was so atrocious that it cost them a chance to be a great team. In 2014, Marshall had a disappointing season and was subsequently traded again. This time he went to the Jets. And Marshall did what he had done over and over, go to a new team and dominate right away. In 2015, Marshall led the league in receiving touchdowns on the back of 1,500 yards. Then his performance took a nosedive the following year, and the team released him after that. In 2013, the Seahawks sent a 1st, 3rd, and 7th round pick to the Vikings for the speedy X Factor, Percy Harvin. Harvin was a former 1st-round pick out of Florida who, when he came into the NFL, he was expected to be one of the big-time X Factors in the NFL. Unfortunately, it didn't quite happen the way Minnesota had hoped. He became a great return man there, but just never quite the level of receiver they had hoped. And at this time, Seattle was just looking for a big-time playmaker, so they were willing to take their chances. Well, in 2013, the Seahawks had an amazing season, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl in dominating fashion. However, Percy Harvin barely even played that year. He had a hip injury in the offseason that kept him out till November, and that hip injury became a lingering issue that would take him out of most of the games the rest of the way. He did have that epic return touchdown in the Super Bowl, but that was pretty much his only good moment in Seattle. There were stories later that came out about altercations between him and teammates like Golden Tate and Doug Baldwin. Allegedly during his time there, the whole vibe in the locker room was just off. After refusing to go back into a game early in the 2014 season, the Seahawks traded Harvin to the Jets for a conditional pick. And Harvin did more in New York than in Seattle, but it still wasn't much. He was released by the Jets after the season. In 2017, the Patriots were looking for a deep threat, and they acquired Brandin Cooks from the Saints for a 1st-round pick. Cooks was a smaller, speedier wide receiver who had made a living in New Orleans on the deep ball. And in 2017, it was no different. He continued to play well. He was a solid player who put up over 1,000 yards and had one of the highest yards per catch numbers in the NFL. Cooks helped the Patriots return to the Super Bowl, where he ended up being knocked out of the game early with a concussion. And that was it for his time in New England. Attempting to save money, the Patriots basically got back what they paid for Cooks by sending him to the Rams in 2018 for a 1st-round pick and a late-round pick swap. Once again, Cooks was a total beast, helping take the Rams offense to another level in Sean McVay's 2nd season. He put up his career high in yards as the Rams put up over 32 points a game. Once again, Cooks played a critical role to help his team make a run to the Super Bowl. This time, he was playing against the Patriots. And what people remember most about this game related to Cooks was him getting shut down. And he was also the intended target on Stefon Gilmore's game-sealing interception. Cooks would struggle in 2019 before getting traded again, this time to Houston. Houston received Cooks and a 4th rounder for a 2nd-round pick. And like we saw with Brandon Marshall, Cooks got back to form and put up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons before struggling in 2022. All in all, Cooks was never a top 5 receiver or anything in his prime, but he was always solid and performed well on multiple teams right away. Funny enough, he was traded again, this time to the Cowboys, which made Cooks tied for the most traded player in NFL history. He had a decent season given how much the Cowboys gave up for him, but after he got hurt in 2024, they ended up releasing him. During the 2018 season, the Cowboys were looking for a spark after they got off to a lackluster 3-4 start. So, Jerry Jones called up the Oakland Raiders and sent them a first-round pick for Amari Cooper. Cooper was a former top 5 pick in his 4th season with the Raiders, and he had been good for most of his career there, although some may argue that his production wasn't quite what you'd expect from a top 5 pick. Regardless, when it was clear in 2018 that the Raiders were going nowhere, they ended up being okay with dishing out their number 1 wide receiver. Cooper was in the midst of his worst season as a pro. However, after arriving in Dallas, it was an immediate fireworks show between him and Dak. Cooper put up career highs in receptions and yards per game in his 9 starts in Dallas in 2018. This was highlighted by a pair of insane performances, one of which he had 10 catches for 217 yards and 3 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns was the game winner in overtime versus Philly. Finally, a Cowboys trade for a receiver worked in their favor. Cooper would go on to be one of the best receivers in the NFL in 2018, 2019, and 2020. Everything had gone pretty well for Dallas and Cooper, until after 2020. They had paid him a 5-year, $100 million contract, and then by 2021, Cooper had seen a large dip in production. And because Jerry Jones had paid so many guys a ton of money, he had to move Cooper for basically peanuts. He was traded in 2022 to the Browns for a measly 5th-round pick. And then for Cooper, he had 2 great seasons in Cleveland, including career highs in touchdowns in 2022 and yards in 2023. Then things got weird in 2024 and he was sent to Buffalo, where he never had quite the impact that they expected. Now, he's retired. March 13th, 2019 was an insane day when it came to blockbuster wide receiver trades. Odell Beckham Jr. was sent from the Giants to the Browns, and Antonio Brown was sent from the Steelers to the Raiders. Let's start with AB. The Steelers received 2 mid-round picks in exchange for Antonio Brown. To that point, Antonio Brown had been possibly the best receiver in the 2010s. And initially he was going to be sent to Buffalo, but it was canceled because AB protested on social media. Apparently he'd rather go play for the Raiders than play with a young Josh Allen. At the time, AB's talent far outweighed 2 mid-round picks, but he had become a distraction within the locker room. Well, immediately this trade backfired, and it was a total disaster. At first, Antonio Brown talked about how he wanted to be a great teammate and try to get the best out of his teammates around him, but it was just one bizarre thing after another, and let's run through them real quickly. Number 1, he got frostbite on his feet due to not wearing proper footwear in the cryotherapy chamber. This forced him to miss most of training camp. Number 2, he made a huge deal about wearing his old helmet, which was no longer approved by the NFL. Even when he found a replacement, it also didn't meet NFL standards. This kept him out of practice even longer, and he was eventually fined by the team for violating team rules. Number 3, later he allegedly got into an altercation with the GM Mike Mayock, calling him a cracker and allegedly threatened to hit him. And number 4, he later apologized in front of the team for his actions throughout training camp, and he said that he planned on playing for the team. And no joke, 1 day later he demanded to be released from the team after they voided the guaranteed money from his contract. The team granted his release, and AB lost out on nearly $30 million. The biggest thing we learned from this trade was how impressive it was for Tomlin to keep this guy under wraps for as long as he did. For the other big trade in 2019, the Cleveland Browns made big-time news when they traded for Odell Beckham Jr. At the time, this dude was a superstar. He was the biggest name in the NFL non-quarterback. And shortly after this trade, Odell had made news when he said that the Giants had sent him to Cleveland for his career to die. And those ominous comments really set the tone for his time in Cleveland. The 2019 Browns were seen as Super Bowl contenders in the preseason, but they fell completely flat. OBJ put up the worst numbers of his career in a season that he played most of the games. To make matters worse, he was seeing another downtick in production in 2020 before getting injured for the season. And then the Browns offense oddly did better without him. Their numbers as a whole improved, and they went on to make the playoffs and win a playoff game. This sparked debates all around the fan base, questioning if OBJ should even be a part of the team, as Baker Mayfield seemed like it was better when he was not forcing the ball to him. Those who were anti-Odell felt like his presence alone made the team worse. Well, in 2021, things were just as bad as 2020 for OBJ. Things got so rough that OBJ's dad reposted a video highlighting Baker simply missing OBJ or deliberately not throwing the ball to him. This sparked a nationwide conversation about the issue, and it became the catalyst to OBJ being released shortly thereafter. To make matters worse, OBJ immediately had success with the Rams and scored a touchdown in their Super Bowl victory. On March 16, 2020, the Cardinals made a big-time move when they traded a second-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and running back David Johnson to the Texans for DeAndre Hopkins. At the time, this trade was seen as a steal for the Cardinals. Everyone was making fun of Bill O'Brien and the Texans because when you have a player like DeAndre Hopkins, who was an all-pro level receiver, and you trade mid-round picks and a running back who hadn't been good and healthy in years, it just was bizarre. Right away, Hopkins went off, posting 115 catches for over 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns. This included the Hail Murray game winner. And after the season, Hopkins was named to his 5th Pro Bowl. The following year, the team jumped out to an incredible 7-0 start. However, D-Hop's injuries played a major role in what derailed the Cardinals' season. He only played in 2 games after Week 8, and the team went from looking like the NFC favorite to losing badly in round 1 of the playoffs. It only got worse from there. D-Hop was suspended for 6 games in 2022 for violating the substance abuse policy. When he returned, he put up decent numbers, but the team was cooked. And when you've completely lost your offensive identity, star receivers are often the first piece to be sent away. The Cardinals decided after 2022 to blow things up and start from scratch. This included releasing Hopkins. A few days after that Hopkins trade went down in 2020, Stefon Diggs was traded from the Vikings to the Bills for a massive draft haul. Diggs had been a productive receiver during his time in Minnesota, but unfortunately by the end, he just felt like his role was diminishing and he could do more than they were allowing him to do. Plus, the Bills were looking for a number 1 wide receiver to pair their young quarterback Josh Allen with, so it was just a good time to make this trade. Well, the Bills were immediately pleased with this trade. Diggs and Allen dominated in 2020. Diggs led the league in targets, catches, and yards, as the Bills were one of the best teams in football. Diggs proceeded to dominate in the playoffs, as Buffalo made a run to the AFC Championship before being bested by Kansas City. Over the next 3 years, Diggs was one of the best receivers in the NFL, marking 4 Pro Bowls in 4 straight seasons. However, after the 2023 season, the team did decide to trade him again. The 2 reasons the Bills traded him came down to 1, he felt like his role was diminishing in the offense, and 2, it really just came down to the fact that they had already paid Josh Allen and they weren't going to pay him big time wide receiver 1 money, so it made sense to make this trade. So the Bills sent him to Houston with a couple late picks in exchange for a 2nd rounder. And unfortunately, Diggs suffered a torn ACL midway through 2024. And did not re-sign with them after the season. Now, he's a member of the Patriots. By 2021, Julio Jones had been well established as one of the best receivers in the NFL for pretty much going on a decade at that point. And 2020 was a little disappointing for both Julio Jones and the Falcons, and after that season, he requested a trade, citing the desire to go play for a championship-level team. The Falcons ended up sending him to the Titans, a team that won 11 games in 2020. And this also meant that now Ryan Tannehill around him had 3 freaks of nature: Derrick Henry in the backfield, A.J. Brown, who was the number 1 wide receiver, and Julio Jones. 2021 saw total dominance to begin the season by the Titans, and they finished 12-5. But Julio Jones was an afterthought in the offense. He dealt with injuries and wasn't very productive when he was out there. He only averaged 3 catches a game in his worst statistical season of his career. This led to the Titans releasing Jones after the season, and he didn't do much of anything after that. Well, things would only get worse for the Titans after that. A.J. Brown had been their number 1 wide receiver since he stepped foot on the field for the first time for them. But 2021 was a disappointment. Amidst a contract dispute, as well as the fact that just the Titans felt like they could get a better player in this upcoming draft, they decided to ship him out of town, and they sent him to the Philadelphia Eagles.
And in 10, oh boy, deep ball it is, and it is caught for the touchdown!
Overnight, A.J. Brown completely altered the Eagles' offense. They began to dominate. As one of the best receivers in the NFL, A.J. Brown put up career highs as the Eagles made a Super Bowl run before losing to the Chiefs. From there, Brown continued to be one of the best in the league in 2023 and 2024. And in 2024, they returned to the Super Bowl. And in the NFC title game and Super Bowl, A.J. Brown scored touchdowns. And he, along with the Eagles, won the big game. As of today, there is weird drama between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts that dates back to previous seasons. However, despite this, there's no denying what he and the Eagles have accomplished the 3 previous seasons. This trade took their offense to the next level, and is proof why these types of trades should happen. Meanwhile, the guy the Titans replaced him with, Treylon Burks, isn't even on their roster currently, and he was barely playing by the end of his time in Tennessee. Earlier in the 2022 offseason, there were some other massive receiver trades. I already talked about the Amari Cooper trade to Cleveland, where they basically got him for nothing, but also there was the Davante Adams trade. The Raiders sent a first and second round pick to the Packers in exchange for Davante Adams. This meant that they had paired him with his former college quarterback Derek Carr, as well as the fact that Davante Adams had been a lifelong Raiders fan, so this fulfilled a childhood dream of his. This trade was huge because Rodgers and Adams had been arguably the best quarterback to wide receiver connection in the NFL over the previous few seasons. Adams had over 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns the season prior to being traded. Then in 2022, Adams proved that he could still play at a high level outside of Green Bay, going on to put up over 1,500 yards once again, and he led the league in receiving touchdowns on his way to earning first-team All-Pro honors. However, this didn't do much for the Raiders' fortunes. They went 6-11, mostly due to their terrible defense. The team decided to release Derek Carr after the season, and they replaced him with Jimmy Garoppolo. This did not go well. Garoppolo played terribly, then got hurt, and the team had to roll with Aiden O'Connell for 10 games. Although the team turned things around mid-season after the firing of Josh McDaniels, O'Connell did fine, but was a clear downgrade from Derek Carr, and Davante saw a downtick in production because of it. The following year, Davante got off to a decent start, but suffered a hamstring injury that kept him out a few weeks. The Raiders were terrible that season, and reports surfaced that Adams wanted out. On October 15, 2024, the team granted his request and reunited him with Rodgers in New York for a conditional mid-round pick. The Jets were desperate for a spark, and while Adams performed well, it didn't help the team win games. The Jets cleaned house after the season, which included ditching Rodgers and Adams. At the end of the day, bad organizations can't be saved by a star receiver. So trading the house for one and paying them a bunch of money is probably not going to pay off, unless you're already well structured as a team. And we will see more proof of this with the next blockbuster trade of the 2022 offseason. 6 days after that Davante Adams trade went down in 2022, Tyreek Hill was traded from the Chiefs to the Dolphins for a massive draft haul. And for good reason, because he had been the fastest and quickest wide receiver in the league and had made a Pro Bowl every single year of his career. Tyreek Hill was a big part of their championship run back in 2019. However, kind of like what I've talked about previously in this video, when you pay a quarterback at the level of Mahomes and how he got paid, you're just not going to be paying Tyreek Hill top of the market money, so this move made sense. The Mike McDaniel-led Dolphins were looking to give Tua the best supporting cast possible. They had drafted Jalen Waddle 6th overall in 2021, so now having Waddle and Hill pretty much gave them the fastest receiving duo in the league. Focusing on Tyreek, he began putting up monster numbers instantly. In 2022, he put up career highs in catches and yards, and was a candidate for Offensive Player of the Year. Then 2023 was even more impressive. He had nearly 1,800 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. Both were the most in the NFL. However, Miami's system was built upon a formula that just didn't work when it got cold outside. This was clearly evident when they went to Baltimore late in the season and got crushed. Then, the same thing happened when they went to Kansas City for the wild card. This team was fun and flashy, but they peaked as just that. They were never a serious contender with how they were built, and it all fell apart in 2024. The team looked like a shell of itself offensively, and Tyreek and even Waddle's numbers fell off a cliff. In 2025, it was looking even worse. And then, Tyreek Hill had his gruesome injury that ended his season. At the age of 30 currently, either Tyreek is going to retire from how bad his injury was, or he's going to be less than what he was prior to it. And this is strictly speaking of his on-the-field stuff. Off the field, he's been a headache for the organization, and you could argue that he's been doing more harm than good for the team recently. Meanwhile, the Chiefs got rid of him, and they never looked back, going on to win 2 Super Bowls. As of the time of recording this video, there's been a few big name receivers that were traded, all of which took place in the offseason. Deebo Samuel to the Commanders for a 5th round pick, DK Metcalf to the Steelers for a 2nd rounder and late round pick swap, and George Pickens to the Cowboys for a 3rd rounder and a late round pick swap. It's still way too early to evaluate these trades, although Metcalf and Pickens have performed well, especially George Pickens. Hey, the Cowboys aren't going to have a great season due to their defense, but this guy is balling out. I'm mostly pumped about this because George Pickens is single-handedly saving my fantasy season.
Fake it to Williams, Prescott loading up, floats it over the top of the defense. George Pickens with a ball in hand, then a hurdle, taking it down inside the 10.